Hey guys, so recently I'm doing a quick little series just on some of my favorite cameras. The first one in the series was the Panasonic GH5, and today I'm going to talk about the Canon EOS R, why I like it, why I don't. Let's give 3 reasons why I do, 3 reasons why I don't, so let's get started. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, leave a comment below. What camera are you using? So let's talk about the Canon EOS R. Now, when this camera first came out, it got a lot of backlash online just because it was severely limited in terms of the video specifications that it can do. Cameras like the GH5 that we mentioned before had a lot more video features for a lot cheaper. So let's talk about a few reasons why I love the Canon EOS R and a few reasons why sometimes I'm really irked by it. The first reason why I like the EOS R is going to come down to the image quality. Now, it has a fantastic 30 megapixel sensor that's pretty much like the 5D Mark IV, where if you guys know, it's been one of the most popular professional cameras of the last generation. Basically, every professional photographer has really used this camera, and this is like the mirrorless version of it, so the image quality is absolutely fantastic. Not only of photos or stills, as some people say it, but also I think the 4K image, when it's like of a still image, is a really nice and pleasing image. And of course, you do get Canon log, which is a flat profile that you can easily grade, and the colors are really beautiful in this camera. There's just something about the image, what people call Canon colors, that's extremely pleasing. So even if you're somebody who's new to camera gear, I've gotten into it fairly recently. The Canon colors are definitely something that popped out at me, and I really enjoy them. Now let's talk about a reason why I don't like this camera so much. When doing video, I just feel like it's really limited in a lot of aspects. First of all, at 4K, you do get a fairly significant crop of 1.77. Basically, all that means is it's a full frame camera, but if you put like a 24 millimeter lens on there, it's not going to be 24 millimeters. You're going to have to multiply that by 1.77, and it's just going to make you look more compressed if you're doing a shot like this at 24 millimeters. In general, you got to get a lot closer. Now, there is a way around this. I'm going to mention the Metabone Speed Booster in one of my points about the positives, but the crop, while it's not terrible, you do have to work around it, and it's definitely not my favorite thing on the camera. While the crop, compared to even a Micro Four Thirds or an APS-C camera, it's not necessarily the end of the world. You can work around it. You just have to get wider lenses. It is a little bit unfortunate. I wish they could make it more full frame or at least get closer, because it really does limit you in a lot of situations. You just really have to use very wide lenses. Now, the second reason why I really like this camera is the absolute flexibility in the lenses that you can use. Now, the new RF lenses are absolutely fantastic. They have really fast autofocus. They have generally sharper, very nice colors and contrast compared to the previous generation EF lenses. But the only problem, most of them are fairly expensive. So while people haven't really bought them yet, as Canon released most of their professional quality lenses like the 24-70, 28-70 f2 first before the more consumer grade lenses, you can use an adapter on the Canon EOS R without too many drawbacks in order to use older EF glass on it. Got a $99 adapter that Canon often bundled for free depending on the time of year that you bought this camera. Basically then, you just put it on, you can slap an EF lens on there, autofocus still works, it communicates with the lens. It's really a great solution. I went a step further and decided to get the Metabone Speed Booster. Basically, what this does, first, it's going to give you an additional stop of light, so an f4 lens is going to become an f2.8 lens, which is pretty great. More light is always good. And most importantly, it's going to reduce the crop that you get in 4K from 1.77 to around 1.24, which is a lot more manageable. And then basically, you can use your lenses closer to their intended focal lengths on a full frame camera. It's still not exactly full frame. You do get a slight crop, but it's definitely considerably better than the crop that you get initially. And this basically lets you use every type of EF lens, so it's very good. And I'll also briefly mention the other adapter that you can get, either the control ring, which allows you to sort of control whatever you want on the camera, like the ISO or the aperture, and there's also one with built-in ND filter similar to a cinema camera, and that's also pretty fantastic. And then the second little potential negative aspect of this camera, now I don't mind that as much, but being mirrorless, they're supposed to be smaller and lighter, but especially if you pair it with some of these new RF lenses like the 28 to 70, and you have a battery grip on this camera, it's an absolute huge camera. I even compared it side by side to some other large cameras like a Panasonic S1H. When this has a battery grip, it's actually really, really large and fairly heavy. Now, I like larger cameras when they're heavier. I think it gives you more stability, so for me, it's not really a negative. But generally, if you want a small, light camera to move around in, you technically can do it with this. Let's say if you're using the RF 35mm 1.8 lens, that's a pretty compact lens. You can put it on here and not have a battery grip and you should be okay. But in general, it's definitely not going to be a small camera. For example, I think the GH5 with something like a 12 to 35 lens is going to be a little bit lighter and smaller than this. But that's just a small caveat to be aware of if you want a very small camera. The third thing I really like about this camera is just the ergonomics, the build quality, and the menu layout. Everything's very intuitive. It's fairly easy to follow. Like if you want to use C-Log in 8-bit or 10-bit, it's very easy to do. It wasn't really hard to pick up this camera. Something like a Sony a7 III has a lot more convoluted menus, but in general, I found this camera very easy to use. And that's where we come to our sort of last negative point about this camera. And once again, that's going to come down on the video side. Pictures are fine, they look beautiful. I think it's just missing way too many significant video features. We talked about the crop previously, and then something else that really irks me, there's no in-body image stabilization. Now, even when using the RF 24 to 70, which has 5 stops of stabilization on the lens, it's still a little bit shaky when you handhold it. And if the camera had in-body stabilization like the GH5 does, I think you would solve a lot of these issues. And basically, there's no 4K 60p, so it's very hard to do high resolution, slow motion with no in-body image stabilization, as well as no 4K 60p. You're kind of left with having to use 1080p, which the 1080p I guess looks fine on this camera, but if you're using expensive glass like the new RF lenses, I think you definitely want to be shooting in 4K just to get the utmost in image quality. So it definitely is a little bit lackluster in these type of features. Of course, the upcoming Canon R5 and R6 are going to address these issues by having no crop and maybe even 8K. It's also going to have 4K 60p. So that's going to address a lot of these issues and sort of bring this camera up to a great video standard. So to summarize, I really do like the image quality of this camera. Often you can get it on sale. It's not prohibitively expensive. The RF lenses are fantastic. It has a lot of options with the different EF adapters and the speed boosters where you can get fantastic performance. But if you're a serious video shooter, keep in mind it has some serious limitations like no 4K 60, no in-body image stabilization. So in that case, I would steer you more towards a GH5 or something like that, which is going to be more fully featured. And when the Canon R5 comes out, I think it's really going to dominate sort of the scope and every other company is going to be reacting. But for now, we're kind of left with these little bit lackluster features. But overall, I do like the camera, especially if you can get it at a good price and you have some EF lenses already. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.